Okay, remember that they're changing my voice. So I had to rush through the last video, but it's still a good video, especially with the writing at the end. This video is about racism and how to talk about the races. We live in a society where white denial is rampant, including when it comes to the classrooms where they talk about white denial. So you have a bunch of token minorities and perhaps white people in some places. I don't know how it breaks down in terms of demographics, but I know that everyone I've come across who talks about white denial is somebody who is serving the governing class. They're saying a lot of things that are true, but they're just serving them. Okay? And they're just presenting things in a controlled opposition format or manner. So when it comes to talking about race and racial issues, you have to tell the truth or you're being racist. For example, if you downplay the horrors of colonialism on purpose, for example, you're being racist toward Native Americans in the sense, and other peoples, in the sense that you're downplaying their suffering and you're making it harder for their race. And that's a form of a racist act. If you downplay the fact that I'm Christ and I'm back and I'm from an black African patriarchal line, you're being racist against black people. And you're making it harder for everyone because everyone wants to know the truth. They don't want racism to get in the way. So what we see that whites, Jews, LGBT people, and token minorities, to whom it may apply, those particular ones that are the main ones doing it, for example, there's a spectrum, right? We see that they want people to discuss things in a way that downplays that the leadership coming from white, Jew, and LGBT people historically was extremely poor. They want you to downplay that. And when you downplay that, you're not giving credit where it's due. For example, if you acted like Michael Jordan was an average basketball player, okay, to be diplomatic to the other races or whatever, you would be being racist against black people because based on their race, you're not giving them credit. And they didn't sabotage anyone else. For example, white people historically like to say things like, whites invented all these things. What did black people invent? First of all, there's not a lot of honest discussion about what black people invented. Most scholars agree on that. Secondly, there was a time when black people weren't allowed to go to college and they were kept from reading. So to zoom in on that and act like that's all there is to it is being racist to black people. And most people, including white racists, if they were put on TV, would have to admit that too. They would say, yes, that logic is sound, almost certainly. Pretty straightforward. So to downplay the sabotage that's disproportionately aimed at people of minority and black people is being racist. Okay, now if you were to go out of your way to cover up that white people, poor white people to some degree are sabotaged too, that would be racist. But I have countless videos where I bring up that poor white people are sabotaged too. Now for me to be angry about racism and to express righteous indignation is what the ideal person would do and what the ideal person has done, what have you. The very fact that I, the top martial artist ever possible, have to explain these things shows you that we live in a racist society. Why do I feel the need? Why is this a necessary step when it comes to discussing things? Pretty straightforward, right? So when you look on the screen and you see the three different pictures I've put there, one is a modern English court where they're still wearing wigs, symbols of colonial oppression. Now, because the English establishment is basically a bunch of conservatives, some of them have some liberal tendencies, but overall, they're conservative, just like the government, the American government. They're conserving corruption, they're conserving white supremacy, okay, they're conserving controlled opposition gimmicks, they're conserving these key components of historical colonialism, right? It's a neo-colonial government, including the Democratic Party. And these days, some of us have been saying it the whole time, some people in the last 4 or 5 years have started going on and on about how the Democratic Party is out of touch with the working class. Well, newsflash, they always were out of touch with the working class because they're neo-colonial people, including the token minorities. The reason why they're called token minorities is because they're in white colonial culture and they're pretending to care, and the white people in the establishment, white Jew and LGBT, they're like, well, we've included them. Isn't that nice? And that's called a gimmick. And the people who go along with it, who are minorities, are called token minorities. It's not a term of endearment. It's not a respectable term. It's like a Judas term because they are Judases. Do they stop everything and tell the truth about everything and carry their cross? No. When you take a position of power where you represent a community that's oppressed and you play the game and you're a Freemason or something, or you're in some kind of, society or group or network that makes you a complete sellout, that is pure evil. Once you take a position of power like that, it behooves you more than the average person to put righteousness over your family and your life and your finances. They do not do that because they are a Judas punk. They are Judas punks. Anyone who doesn't agree is a complete idiot. Okay, I'm the top martial artist ever possible. To get to this position, I had to have a lot of heart. So it's a walk in the park for me to say this. I'm not saying that doing the right thing is always easy, but I've done certain analysis, I've done certain estimates, assessments, what have you, and I've come to the irrefutable conclusion that when people don't put righteousness first, even if they're the biggest coward that ever lived, that they're a punk. And that's fair to say. Like in the Bible, it says, for lack of discipline, they will die. They didn't have the courage to have moral discipline and to come into the flow of moral repetition to build the heart to do the right thing. So for lack of heart, lack of discipline, for lack of all the life principles, the martial art principles, they spiritually die. So when I look at the screen, right, I see white people who to some degree I'm sure are mixed with other things, right? Maybe they're mixed with black, maybe they're mixed with this and that, Persian, because of the Greek societies that found their way all over Europe. I see what looks like Hispanic people or maybe Filipino people. Their race is a little confusing there. Maybe they're from a country that's not commonly discussed. Okay, they're very similar to the Filipino females I've come across. They look like they're crypto Jews to some degree. They look like they're some kind of indigenous people. And because of their cultivative cycle, okay, they're in a culture that makes them more trustworthy as individuals on average than the people in the wig-wearing culture, we'll say, who are more similar to the people who are said to be part of the purge in the movie Purge. Okay, those people who are like the poster boy and girl for purging poor people. So as I look at this objectively, okay, as somebody who is the top martial artist, I don't overcommit to an idea. I have the humility to tell the truth. Honesty and humility are key martial art principles. I don't let the fact that I'm mad at evil people cloud my judgment. As I look at this as a just and righteous person, I come to the unavoidable conclusion that at first and second glance at least, I trust the indigenous looking people in that picture more than the white looking people in that picture. And they all look like they're mixed with Jew to some degree, and they're heavily influenced by LGBT community people to some degree. So if you were to zoom in on the English picture, they look like white Jew and LGBT people to some degree. That's what I mean by white Jew and LGBT supremacy. Sometimes they're completely Jew if such a thing exists. Sometimes they're completely white if such a thing exists. And they're all LGBT-ish. Freemasonry is LGBT-ish. George Washington in his pictures is LGBT-ish. Okay? The American government, because they don't really man up, they're acting like a gender-neutral person. That's LGBT-ish. Vir and virtue means, man, what is the pinnacle of morality in the human history? It's in a masculine martial art warrior. It's in me. And I am not gender neutral. After years of them fuming me and poisoning me, I don't even say things that are somewhat awkward and maybe even embarrass me in a sense. Okay, they've given me, they've covertly administered. I don't accept their nonsense willingly. I do not accept any of their nonsense, and I urge people to rally to me to secure me justice. But they've blocked my testosterone levels to some degree, and they've given themselves testosterone enhancers. Okay, and I'm manning up. They're still tail tucked, acting like a punk, because there's more to it than testosterone levels. Morality transcends testosterone levels, but however, the pinnacle of morality has been expressed in someone who naturally has high testosterone levels. That's me, who's a man. And when you look at things and you describe them and you downplay that, it is pure evil. That's why so many feminists look like feminist bitches these days when they explain it. They're some Luciferian cult bitch, some Medusa Lilith whore, and they're like, nah. And it's despicable and disgusting. Just because you're being abused by the white male patriarchy, the Jewish male patriarchy, token minority male patriarchy, and whoever else, doesn't mean you should act like an evil bitch and persecute Jesus with the scum who are making your lives hard.